Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. Story 1. Shadow Figure in the Corn. Jake, whose real name is Ethan Miller, a 22-year-old, worked as a security guard for a large farm in Polk County, Iowa, in the fall of 2015. The corn harvest was approaching, and the farm owner wanted to ensure no thieves or vandals would trespass on their vast cornfields. Jake was tasked with patrolling the fields at night using a pickup truck equipped with a modern surveillance camera system. He usually started his shift at dusk, when the tall rows of corn began to sink into darkness, creating a scene that was both vast and desolate. The first few nights passed peacefully. Jake would drive slowly along the dirt roads between the cornfields, occasionally stopping to check the camera monitors. The headlights of the truck shone into the towering rows of corn, creating bizarre and frightening shadows. The sound of the wind rustling through the dry corn leaves created an eerie noise, making Jake always feel like someone was watching him from behind the tall stalks. One Saturday night, around 2 a.m., while Jake was reviewing the footage from camera number 4, which was mounted on the edge of a large cornfield, he suddenly saw something unusual. On the screen, he saw a strange white light moving between the rows of corn. The light wasn't flickering but moving very slowly and steadily, as if someone was walking through the field carrying a lantern. Jake rubbed his eyes. He was sure that no one was allowed in the cornfields at night. Jake accelerated the pickup truck and drove towards the area where the camera had recorded the white light. When he got closer, he stopped the truck and turned off the headlights, trying to see through the towering rows of corn. But he saw nothing. He opened the truck door and listened. There was only the sound of the wind blowing and insects chirping. He told himself it was probably just a reflection of light from a car passing by on the nearby highway. But when Jake got back in the truck and reviewed the footage, he was horrified to realize that the white light had disappeared as soon as he had stopped the truck. And what was even scarier was that, a moment later, the light reappeared in another part of the field, this time moving faster and seemingly heading towards his truck. Jake felt a sense of unease rising within him. He shuddered at the thought of the ghost stories he had heard about lost souls in the cornfields at night. That night, the strange phenomena didn't stop at the white light. On other camera monitors, Jake also saw bizarre dark shadows flitting between the rows of corn. Sometimes he even heard strange noises, like heavy footsteps or indistinct whispers echoing from the field. Jake started to feel genuinely scared. He tried to contact headquarters, but no one answered. He felt completely alone and helpless amidst the vast and dark cornfields. Around 4 a.m., while Jake was driving along a narrow dirt road, he suddenly saw a tall figure standing right in the middle of the road. Not far from his truck, the figure stood silently, motionless, and completely shrouded in darkness. Jake quickly slammed on the brakes, the truck stopping just short of the figure. He turned on the high beams, and what he saw made him utterly horrified. It was a tall, gaunt man with a long, pointed face, deep, black eyes staring straight at him, and in his hand he held something long and sharp. Jake screamed in terror and quickly reversed the truck. But the figure had moved very fast. It lunged towards Jake's truck and slammed the sharp object into the windshield. The glass shattered, and shards flew into Jake's face, causing him pain. The figure continued to smash the truck, trying to tear open the door. Jake knew he was in real danger. He tried to restart the truck, but the engine wouldn't turn over. He was trapped in the vast and dark cornfield, facing a terrifying stranger he couldn't understand. In a panic, Jake tried to climb over the passenger seat to escape the truck. But the door on that side was jammed shut. The figure outside continued to smash the truck, the sound of metal screeching eerily. Jake looked around, trying to find something he could use as a weapon. He grabbed the large flashlight and held it tightly in his hand, ready to defend himself. Suddenly, the figure stopped. It raised its head and looked directly into Jake's eyes through the shattered windshield. Its face was pale white, devoid of any expression, but its deep, black eyes exuded a terrifying sense of malice and hatred. Jake felt an icy chill run down his spine. He knew this was no ordinary person. The figure slowly raised the sharp object. It was an old scythe, its blade gleaming in the dim moonlight. Jake knew it was preparing to attack him. In desperation, Jake remembered the walkie-talkie he always carried with him. He quickly reached for it and tried to contact headquarters, his voice trembling as he pleaded for help. Fortunately, a dispatcher heard Jake's distress call and immediately alerted the police. While waiting for the police to arrive, Jake tried to stay calm and observe the actions of the figure outside. It remained standing there, motionless, as if waiting for something. A moment later, Jake heard the sound of police sirens in the distance. The figure outside seemed to hear the sirens too. It turned its head towards the sound, then quickly disappeared into the towering rows of corn. When the police arrived, they found Jake's truck heavily damaged, but there was no trace of the attacker. After recounting what had happened, Jake was taken to the hospital to have his injuries checked. Doctors confirmed he had only suffered minor injuries from the broken glass. However, mentally, Jake had suffered a great shock. He could never forget the terrifying face and hateful eyes of the figure he had seen in the cornfield. The police launched an investigation into the incident, but they found no leads. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no evidence to suggest that any strangers had trespassed on the farm that night. The case became an unsolved mystery. Many locals speculated that Jake had seen a ghost, a lost soul trapped in the cornfields. After the incident, Jake quit his job and moved away. He never wanted to return to those vast and terrifying cornfields again. The story of what he experienced that night became a chilling warning about the strange and frightening things that can lurk in the darkness of quiet rural areas, where sometimes the boundary between the real world and the other side becomes thinner than ever. Story 2. Stranger from the Cornfield. Mark, whose real name is Kevin Peterson, a middle-aged man of 45, lived alone in a quiet rural house near Danville, Illinois, in the late summer of 2018. Mark's house was located right next to a large cornfield. The tall corn stalks had already turned yellowish-brown, signaling the approaching harvest season. Mark had installed a security camera system around his house to prevent theft. As the area was quite deserted at night, he regularly checked the footage from the cameras on his mobile phone, especially at night when he went to bed. One Thursday night, around 11:30 p.m., Mark was lying in bed watching TV when his phone vibrated, notifying him of motion detected at the front door camera. Mark curiously opened the camera app. He often received false notifications due to the wind shaking the trees or wild animals passing by. But this time, what Mark saw on the screen made his hair stand on end. From the direction of the dark cornfield, a strange dark figure was approaching his porch. The dark figure didn't resemble any animal Mark had ever seen. It had a tall, human-like shape, but it moved very strangely. sometimes walking on two legs, sometimes crouching down as if crawling. As the dark figure got closer, Mark could see its shape more clearly. It was a dark, ugly creature with an unusually large head and long, spindly limbs. Its skin was wrinkled and appeared slimy. Under the infrared light of the camera, it looked terrifying. Mark felt his heart pounding in his chest, a primal fear surging through him. Mark sat silently on his bed, not daring to breathe loudly. He kept his eyes glued to his phone screen, following every movement of the strange creature. It slowly stepped onto his porch, stopping right in front of the front door. Mark could hear its heavy, wheezing breath through his phone speaker. The sound sent a chill down his spine. The creature began sniffing around the door, its large head swaying slowly. Mark could clearly see the terrifying details of its face: small, slanted eyes, a flat and wide nose, and a gaping mouth with sharp teeth. Mark felt nauseous looking at the grotesque face up close. Suddenly, the creature raised one of its long, spindly limbs and touched Mark's front door. Its fingers were long and thin, with shiny black claws. Mark held his breath, utterly terrified at the thought that the flimsy door could be broken down at any moment. He remained completely silent, not daring to make any noise to attract its attention. After a few endless minutes, the creature seemed to lose interest. It slowly turned its head and looked towards the dark cornfield. Mark anxiously watched as it backed away and disappeared into the darkness of the towering rows of corn. Only when he could no longer see its figure did Mark dare to let out a sigh of relief. But the fear still haunted him. After the strange creature disappeared into the cornfield, Mark remained motionless on his bed, his heart still pounding. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. He watched the camera footage over and over, trying to find a logical explanation, but to no avail. It wasn't a normal animal, and certainly not a human. Mark decided not to sleep anymore. He got up and went downstairs, turning on all the lights. He thoroughly checked all the doors and windows, making sure they were locked tight. He felt uneasy and worried, not knowing if the creature would return. The next morning, Mark told his story to a close friend named Tom, whose real name was David Miller, who lived in a nearby town. Tom initially didn't believe what Mark said, thinking Mark had a nightmare or had seen something wrong. But when Mark showed Tom the camera footage, Tom was completely horrified. He had never seen anything like it before. Tom advised Mark to report the incident to the police, but Mark hesitated. He was afraid they would think he was crazy. Finally, after much persuasion, Mark agreed to call the local police. When the police arrived and watched the footage, they were also very surprised and confused. They promised to increase patrols in the area, but they couldn't offer any explanation for the creature Mark had seen. The following nights became an obsession for Mark. He didn't dare to sleep soundly, always worried that the creature would return. He constantly checked the security cameras, and every time there was a strange noise, his heart would jump. He felt like he was being watched, and fear always surrounded him. A week later, late one night, Mark received another motion notification from his front door camera. This time, he didn't dare to open the app to watch immediately. He sat motionless on his bed, listening to every sound. Outside, it was pitch black, with only the sound of the wind rustling through the corn stalks. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Mark hesitantly opened the camera app. He was horrified to see the dark, ugly creature standing right in front of his door again, this time even closer to the entrance. Mark could clearly see its sharp teeth as it opened its mouth and let out a chilling hiss. Mark screamed in terror and quickly ran out of his bedroom, rushing downstairs and out the back door, leaving his phone behind, still showing the horrifying scene at the front. He ran frantically into the woods behind his house, not daring to look back until he felt completely exhausted. Mark never returned to that house again, and the footage of the strange creature from the cornfield remains an unsolved mystery, sowing terror in the minds of those who have heard this story. Story 3. The Stalking Clown. The Thompson family, whose real name is the Harris family, consisting of Mike, Sarah, and their 2 young children, Lily, 6, and Tom, 8, moved to a quiet suburban house near the small town of Circleville, Ohio, in the fall of 2017. Their house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a large cornfield behind it. The corn stalks, taller than a person, had begun to dry out, creating a peaceful countryside scene. Mike and Sarah were both very happy with the new house. They thought it was an ideal place to raise their children. To ensure security, Mike had installed several security cameras around the house, including a doorbell camera with recording and motion detection functions. The first few weeks passed uneventfully, and the Thompson family gradually settled into their new life. In the evenings, after putting the children to bed, Mike and Sarah would often sit and watch TV or chat on the sofa in the living room. They felt safe and comfortable in their home. The cornfield behind the house was usually silent at night, with only the sound of wind rustling through the dry corn leaves. One Saturday night, around 10 p.m., as Mike was getting ready for bed, he received a notification from the doorbell camera app on his phone. The notification said that motion had been detected at the front door. Mike curiously opened the app to see, thinking it was probably just a stray cat passing by. But what Mike saw on the screen made his heart stop. A terrifying clown was standing right in front of his house. He was wearing a brightly colored clown costume, stained with mud, with a pale white face covered in gaudy makeup, and deep black eyes staring straight into the camera. He was holding a shiny knife in his hand. Mike quickly woke Sarah up, his voice trembling. Sarah initially didn't believe what Mike was saying, thinking he was joking, but when Mike handed her the phone, Sarah's face also went pale. They both looked at the screen, watching the clown standing silently in front of their house. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, like a terrifying statue. Mike wanted to call the police immediately. He reached for the handgun he kept in his bedside drawer. But Sarah stopped him. She said they should observe him from inside first, not wanting to provoke him and endanger the children. For nearly 10 minutes, the clown stood there, completely still. Occasionally, he would tilt his head, as if listening to something. Mike and Sarah sat silently in the living room, extremely tense. They didn't dare turn on the lights, only peeking through the window blinds, trying to monitor the clown's every move. Lily and Tom were still sound asleep upstairs, completely unaware of what was happening. Finally, the clown seemed to grow impatient. He slowly turned his back and walked towards the dark cornfield. Mike and Sarah anxiously watched until he completely disappeared into the darkness of the towering corn stalks. Mike quickly ran outside to check, but there was no trace of the clown. He only saw strange footprints on the damp grass, leading straight to the edge of the cornfield. That night, Mike and Sarah couldn't sleep at all. They took turns keeping watch, fearing the clown would return. The next morning, they reviewed the footage from the doorbell camera and were horrified to realize the clown had been standing in front of their house for nearly an hour. And what was even scarier was that, around 3 a.m., The camera also recorded him trying to open the front doorknob. But fortunately, the door was locked. The following nights became a real nightmare for the Thompson family. Just as they feared, the terrifying clown reappeared in front of their house every night, usually around 10 p.m. or in the early morning hours. He always stood silently, holding the knife in his hand, staring at the house with a menacing look. Mike and Sarah felt completely helpless and scared. They didn't know why this clown was targeting their family. Mike became increasingly worried and wanted to take action. He had taken out his handgun and was ready to confront the clown if he tried to break into the house. But Sarah always stopped him, fearing that using a gun could endanger the children. Instead, she suggested they should record all of the clown's actions with the camera as evidence. They tried many ways to scare the clown away, such as installing motion sensor floodlights, leaving the lights on all night, or even playing loud music when he appeared. But everything was in vain. The clown persistently appeared every night, like a predator stalking its prey. One night, the clown didn't just stand at the front door anymore. The camera recorded him walking around the house, trying to look into the ground floor windows. He even tried to forcefully shake the doorknob of the children's bedroom window, making Mike and Sarah extremely frightened. They feared that the clown would find a way to break into the house. The Thompson family lived in extreme fear. Lily and Tom began to show strange behaviors. They frequently had nightmares and were afraid to be alone. Mike and Sarah knew they couldn't continue living like this any longer. This place had become too dangerous for their children. They started thinking about moving. One night, Sarah woke up and saw something strange on the camera monitor. The clown wasn't standing at the front door as usual. Instead, he was in the cornfield behind their house. He was holding the knife and walking between the tall rows of corn, as if looking for a way into the house from the back. Sarah quickly woke Mike up and showed him the footage. They realized that the clown was trying every possible way to approach their house. That same night, around 3 a.m., Mike and Sarah heard a strange noise coming from the back of the house. They looked at each other worriedly. Mike, holding his gun, slowly moved towards the back door. When he opened the door, he didn't see the clown, but he saw several corn stalks bent and broken, as if someone had just passed through there. Mike felt a chill run down his spine. He knew the clown had been very close to them. After that night, Mike and Sarah had no more doubts. They decided they had to move immediately. They couldn't risk their children's lives by staying in this place. They contacted a real estate company and started looking for a new house in another town. Eventually, the Thompson family moved away, leaving behind the house and the terrifying cornfield. They never found out why that clown had targeted their family, and the horror of those nights of being stalked forever haunted them. If you want to hear more true horror stories, don't forget to subscribe to my channel.